My name is Marina Nababan, and here I want to present a presentation entitled Gender, Language, and Power, Surname or Sirname. So the first I want to explain to you about the brief history for surname or Sirname. So the fact is that until the early 80s, in the US, all of women positions become her husband when she married. Women themselves were seen as property, just as slaves were in that era. Women who were slaves, of course, had no right uh, to possessions. Every state had laws whereby a husband owned all property and whereby women were property and could not own property. Both slave and woman took on the surname of the head of the household. In the middle of the 19th century, a series of married women's property acts in several states gave women the right to retain property held before marriage. These were called coverture laws and varied by state. Slave women, however, were not given this right. The right to retain one's birth surname wasn't considered as an issue, even not for non-slave women. One of the first women to take up this agenda was the early woman's name, the right advocate Elizabeth Cady Stanton or Mercedes Harry Stanton, who kept her birth surname as a middle name when she married Harry Stanton. This was unusual for the time, discussing the common convention of married woman going by Mr. followed by the husband, first name and surname. And also, for this, in these presentations, there is a third wave of feminism in the U.S. The first is began in the 19th century and extended into the early 20th century, focused primarily on legal rights for women such as suffrage. And second wave feminism began in the early 1960s and extended to the late 1980s. 1980, this period was concerned with political and social rights for women that went beyond the legal domain. That is to say, second wave feminism were concerned with the oppression of women through power structures of society that are inherent in daily life. During the second wave, women's consciousness was heightened about the issues of their economic and social status in society. And for the third wave has existed since the early 1990s, and focuses less on political and social equality and more on taking account of diverse characteristics of women of all races, ethnicities, and sexual orientations. And also, this is somewhat contradictory to other recent social movements that are currently challenging and sometimes changing civil law regarding sexualities and marriage practices. Nowadays, U.S. women have the legal right to retain their surname where they marry. In fact, that in some states, it is the default to keep one's name unless explicitly stated otherwise. The issue of surname retention is no longer a legal struggle and has not been for decades. Civil laws regarding marriage practice are not for the voce or of struggle. Third wave feminists can take the social labeling practice of surname as a given legal right. And also, in these presentations, I want to tell to you about that for these presentations this data use the qualitative data on women and surname in the U.S. So it shows that there are for the married in the U.S. the total is 134, and for the husband's name there are 108, and for the birth name there are 24 for overall. And also the next is about the surnames and children. The stories repeatedly indicate that the basic understanding of roles of women remains as wife and mothers in a relation to other family members. In fact, the most important part of family unity for the women who participate in my study was the issue of surnames for children. The overwhelming number of respondents and interviews discussed this problem in their stories. And also, in this presentation, I want to reveal that there is identity and power. That among the large number of interviews who did choose to adopt their husband's surname, identity was repeatedly discussed a pivotal issue in their stories. Some were reluctant or regretful about having to give up symbols or of their ethnic identity. For the example, I wish I had kept my mother's maiden name. I'm from an Italian background. So, for this power and identity, there is those who took their husband names are satisfied with the decisions mentions. The first is satisfaction in affiliations. For the example, I have become part of one more loving family. One surname is like a symbol of our union. Changing my surname gave me a feeling that we have become closer to each other. And for the second is shaping the new identity. It must have influenced my self-concept. Blank, blank, blank. In ways unknown to me, it shaped the me I am today. A new name was a sign of my new status or merit. And for the woman who took their husband names and are not satisfied referred to, there are two. The first is sense of lost identity. To some extent, the new surname changed my personality and my thought. They become more like my husband's. It seems to me sometimes that I have lost part of myself. And for close these presentations, I think that we have seen reflection on the issue by women of varied age and educational levels across societies. The result of these studies on surnames and women inform not only the field of linguistics but also sociology, anthropology, political science, women's studies, and psychology research on language and gender. Clearly, gender cannot be abstracted from other aspects of social identity. Thank you. I think that's all for my presentations. Thank you, sir.